like two of my closest buddies were already working in tech and they were on the kind of the
Yeah.
technical side. And I think like we go to dinners and like they go on like a 40-minute tangent about tech and my eyes would just glaze over. And I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
like it definitely can seem daunting. Like you have to somewhat be easy on yourself. And I think the way we talk to ourselves definitely impacts the way we view ourselves. And I think if you're generally interested in getting into it, right, just take a beginner course. I mean, reach out
Hmm.
to somebody that you know is already in the industry and kind of to either get tips or advice or essentially get pointed in the right direction. It's like a lifelong journey. Maybe pick out a company that you're interested in or is near you, or you might have a buddy working at, and be like, "Yo, like I'm trying to get into tech. What kind of be your advice in regards to doing it? Like, what would you do currently?" And yeah, like I think it's definitely important because yeah, it's crazy. This is crazy to think that it took me like legitimately 3 years of like hearing them talk about tech to be being like, cool, like this seems interesting. Maybe I should get into it too. Whereas if I wasn't scared or didn't think it was daunting and just asked them, like it could have taken me like a year, right? And I think
Yeah.
it's not being afraid, but also kind of be easy on yourself and kind of
Yeah.
like understand this is something brand new.
Is it a tech podcast? Well, technically, yes. This is the show for current and future techies who are curious about exploring the world of tech. You'll get to hear from exciting guests, highlighting the diversity of roles and careers within the space, how you can get started, but also the life that comes along with it before, during, and after. My name is Stella, and this is the Technically Yes podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Today's episode is part two of the interview with Hamid. We'll be going over a little bit about tech overwhelm and how to get over that, how to stay on top of learning, and also some of the tools that he uses to help him with his mindset. Enjoy. So I have one last question. Well, probably two last questions for you, but I am curious because, as you said, tech is ever changing and it changes so rapidly. What are some of the tech trends that you're seeing right now that are, just sort of everywhere, or something that stands out to you? It doesn't even have to be something that is, in the news on the like front page every day. But what are some of the major tech trends that kind of pique your interest?
Apart from all the layoffs,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
definitely I definitely
Unfortunately,
would.
that is a trend.
Yeah, and I mean, we could definitely talk a lot about that, but like I think the growth in the cybersecurity space, I think it's been crazy the last couple of years, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
if we look at it now, like I think it's only going to grow more. And I think, and obviously this is somewhat a consistent buzzword in the industry, but AI, right?
Yeah.
I think those two are probably going to continue to be major trends. I mean, if you look at it from a cybersecurity perspective, right? Like most every company is a tech company, right? Regardless if they know it or not, right? So I think
Yeah.
the value of protecting your own assets as well as kind of ensuring and preventing attacks, I think is only gonna yeah, like it's only gonna grow, right? And I think if you look at the cybersecurity
Yeah.
industry, I think so I focused on identity access management. I think uh, during the pandemic that whole industry 2x'd every single year, right?
Mm.
So like I think the trend is only going to grow, and I think if you look at AI, I think AI is also going to be a continually growing trend. I mean, if you look at it now, like there's AI everywhere, right? I mean, if you look at Microsoft, like Microsoft has already added ChatGPT to all the Microsoft products and Office
Yeah.
365, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, like I think those two are probably the biggest trends,
Yeah.
and I think this is kind of why, like, I think it's so important for everybody working in tech, right? I think there's a certain impetus for you to consistently be learning new things as well as kind of staying on top of trends, and
I
I
agree.
think there's so much abundance of different certifications, different courses, different things
Mm-hmm.
that you can do to kind of stay on the ball and kind of continue to be valuable in the industry, right? I mean, one of the things that I seen fairly early on in my tech sales career was people kind of just got complacent, right? And I think this is kind of why I said this is one of the major pitfalls is people are just kind of happy being like, yeah, like I have these five customers who I know are gonna like purchase a certain amount that are gonna get me to 70, 80% of my number. I'm just gonna like chill with them and just like just vibe what my work, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's such a that's such a negative view on it, right? Because for me, it was always one of a like, hey, like let me consistently reach out to new customers, let me consistently absolutely fail like pitching new products and kind of try something new. Like there's so many stories
Yeah.
I have of just like trying to like pitch a new product to a customer and they're like, no, this ain't for us. I'm
Yeah.
like, cool, at least I tried, right? And I
Yeah.
think it's not being afraid to fail as well as kind of consistently learn and challenge yourself. I think, yeah, like I think should be like values for everybody that wants to stay in this industry and wants to be successful, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And it is just that, right? It's like you said, don't be afraid to fail. I think that is super important, and I really want like everyone listening to really take that in, because that is what's going to progress you forward, right? Resting on your laurels, kind of just hanging out in this comfortable space is not going to be what changes it for you. Even when you look
Hmm.
at technology, technology is like consistently failing, right? Like
Yeah.
that's really how it's even built out. It's like how are we like it's through trial and error that a lot of these amazing things have been built. Um, and yeah, I completely agree with you. And another thing that I did want to say as well, because you touched on AI and like how that is everywhere. I always find it quite interesting when I speak to people in the tech space that don't
Hmm.
utilize AI, or they kind of just like overlook AI. And I find that to be so crazy, considering the fact that it literally is everywhere. And I feel like, I don't know, do you use it a lot in like your day to day?
Oh,
Or what does it look like for
absolutely.
you? Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's so to paint a picture in regards, I think, to the overall value of AI. I mean, I know back in last spring, I one of the side projects I was working on was kind of building a garden bed, and like I didn't know where to start. I didn't know kind of what materials I needed. I did not like have a blueprint, nothing, right?
Yeah.
And all I really did was kind of go on ChatGPT and was like, how do I build a raised garden bed? And it basically built out a full roadmap and
Yeah.
that I was able to use to go to Home Depot, pick up the material, understand kind of how to build and kind of how to set up myself, as well as kind of the soil to use, as well as particular plants that need a certain height. So I think
Yeah.
like it's like it's making the accessibility of information so much more accessible, as well as making it easy to understand and more condensed, right? I think it's like it's
100%.
gonna be a game changer, right? And I think, as I
Yeah.
mentioned, it's gonna vastly change the tech industry because yeah, like
Yeah.
it's gonna be like you like I think of it as like Halo, where you have like your little Cortana like just in your helmet, and you're able to kind of ask it questions. But I think it's very much that, right? And I think the more it gets integrated into everyday technologies, the more that yeah, it's going to make our lives way easier and hopefully make technology more adoptable, right? Because I mean, like I think if you look at it, right, like the goal of technology, the way I kind of understand it, is to make life easier. And I
100%.
think if you look at it from AI perspective, yeah, like it's gonna make life easier, as well
Yeah.
as kind of introducing a whole bunch of other issues
Yeah.
that we definitely don't need to go to, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But that's just technology in itself. Like when the internet came out, like it's the same thing, right? Yes,
Yeah,
it's going to change the industry. It's going to change the way we work. Some people may lose their jobs. That's the reality.
yeah.
But there's a shift happening, and you shouldn't be left behind. So,
Yeah,
yeah, thanks for
but I mean
touching on that.
like even saying with the like losing your jobs, right? I mean you also have to remember, right? Like there's going to be like a whole new class of jobs created for
Yeah,
AI, right? I mean
exactly. That's the shift.
you're gonna have programmers who just focus on AI. You're gonna have
Yeah,
like cloud developers, right? So
yeah.
yeah, like I think
Prompt
AI's
engineers, things like
yeah,
that.
and I think like I think the like it yes, it's gonna like eliminate a ton of jobs, but it's also gonna create new ones, right? And I think
Yeah,
always gonna be a fear, and I think this is kind of why it's so important to kind of consistently learn new things, right? Because
exactly.
like you have to stay up to trend, you have to stay up to date, right? And I think it's super important to understand that and kind of not fear technology, right? I mean, if you look at it
Exactly.
like if you look at it from our parents, right? Like my mom still doesn't know how to like text properly, right? And I think
Yeah,
it's because I mean she grew up in a time where technology wasn't a thing, right? And I think
yeah,
we grew up in on the cusp of like dial-up, kind of Windows 98, kind of understanding how things work, to now where we kind of grew up with it, right? And I think if you look at the
yeah,
next generation, like my nieces and nephews, they know how to use like an iPad and learn. They're like 4 or 5, right? And I think
yeah,
it's crazy to see their accessibility and the way they utilize technology because yeah like we never had that ability, right? And I think it's
yeah.
yeah like it's nice to see, but I think it's a little scary, right? And I think it definitely has posed its own challenges in society because nowadays like kids don't go outside, like they don't like eat dirt, they
Yeah.
don't like touch things, and I think
Yeah.
it's definitely like those things are definitely important, I think, for kids. And I think socialization is super important, where I think these days like getting socialization from like being on the computer and like it's not the same, right? And I think
Yeah.
it's kind of why I say technology is a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, we have seen it all when it comes to technology, right?
Yeah,
And it is crazy. It can be scary, but it's here and it's not
yeah,
going anywhere. So the more that we sort of adapt, whether it's like our generation or the generation before us, that would only help us in the long term. And especially if you're a person that is looking into getting into the space, I think it's only, and even if you are in the space, I mean, learn about what's happening within your industry
yeah.
because I feel like that's probably the craziest part. People that are working within tech that have no clue of what's going on. So whether are here already or you're looking to transition in, it's definitely, yeah, just do the research, put a little bit of extra time in.
Yeah,
One last question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
and I think to that, right? Like I think it could be very daunting getting into tech, right? Because I think if I go back to when I was working in marketing, right? Like two of my closest buddies were already working in tech and they were on the kind of the
Yeah.
technical side. And I think like we go to dinners and like they go on like a 40-minute tangent about tech and my eyes would just glaze over, right? And I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
like it definitely can seem daunting, right? It can seem kind of like alien and new, right? And I think like you have to somewhat be easy on yourself, right? And I think the way we talk to ourselves definitely impacts the way we view ourselves, right? I think
Yeah.
like there's so much accessible beginner courses, and I think if you're generally interested in getting into it, right, just take a beginner course, right? I mean, reach out to somebody that you know is already in the industry and kind of to either get tips or advice or essentially get pointed in the right direction, right? But yeah, like I think like it's like a lifelong journey, right? And this is kind of how I've always viewed things, right? And I think
Yeah.
you want to small chunk it, and I think it's super important to kind of build out like some of a roadmap, right? I mean, if you're brand new to tech, maybe pick out a company that you're interested in or is near you, or you might have a buddy working at, and be like, yo, like we're trying to get into tech. What would kind of be your advice in regards to doing it? Like what would you do currently? And yeah, like I think it's definitely important because yeah, it's crazy. This is crazy to think that it took me like legitimately 3 years of like hearing them talk about tech to be being like, cool, like this seems interesting. Maybe I should get into it too.
Yeah.
Whereas if I wasn't scared or didn't think it was daunting and just asked them, like it could have took me like a year, right? And I think
Yeah.
it's not being afraid, but also kind of be easy on yourself. Like be easy on yourself and kind of
Yeah.
like understand this is something brand new and kind of small chunker, right? Like nothing like you can't eat an entire elephant, right? Like you typically do in bites, and I think it's super
Yeah.
important to kind of small chunk it and kind of take baby steps.
Yeah. No, I love that. I feel like that's, yeah, great advice. It really is. It can be so overwhelming, just like you said, and yeah, it's one step at a time. Really, is how you get there, how you get to the destination. And yeah, I love that. So thanks for sharing.
No
So
worries.
one last question, because I know you're big on reading.
Hmm.
And I know generally you have an arsenal of books. Do you have anything that you could recommend to the listeners in terms of something maybe you're reading right now? It doesn't have to be tech related, but
Oh Jesus. To be honest, I'm reading like 10 to 15 different books. I like set up my own audiobook server, so I have
oh
like five
yes,
or
I
different books
remember. Yes.
set up. If you give me a moment, I could definitely pull it up.
Yeah, pull
Um,
something up for us.
yeah, I mean to be honest, like I think f- for a long period of time, all I read was self-development books, and it definitely kind of got me a little crazy. But I think yeah, like I think because I mean like it's essentially somebody telling you like yo, you need to be doing something, you need to be doing this, you need to be doing this, and I think
It's
it kind
too
of removes the
much
pleasure of
sometimes.
reading, right? And I think,
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
mentioned earlier, for me, it's always been one of if there's a challenge in front of me, I want to learn the necessary skills to tackle that challenge, right?
Yeah.
So right now, I mean, like I'm reading The Great Mental Models, General Thinking Concepts by Shane Parrish. Um,
What's that
I'm
about?
reading it's about thinking, right? And it's about kind of building mental models. And I think it's super important in regards to understanding how you think. And I think this relates back to what I said earlier in regards to it's good to so for let's say for example, if I'm trying to learn how to ride a bicycle, right? And there's a set list of instructions for me, I'm going to try to build a mental map or build that understanding in the way I think, right? Because at the end of the day, like that's how I'm going to be able to ride the bike, right? So
Yeah.
I think a lot of what that book is teaching me is just kind of how to better build out that mental map in my head, um, which is good. But yeah, like I think it's it goes back into I think the general theme. If you want a general theme for this podcast, be easy on yourself, consistently learn, and yeah, I think don't be afraid to make mistakes and learn from your mistakes, right? And I think a large majority of what I'm reading and consuming is definitely around that. I'm also reading fiction, right? Like I'm reading The Road, I Am Legend, The Martian, and reading some history about Palestine, a book by Ilian Pape. Hopefully, I'm not butchering his name. The biggest prison on Earth. So yeah, like I think like
Okay.
my reading is definitely all over the place.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm also like and it's kind of why I said like media is so accessible, right? Like I know there's about 5 or 10 different YouTube channels that I also kind of listen to that are cybersecurity related, right? That might have news or
Yeah.
updates on the industry, right? So yeah, like I
Mm-hmm.
think you don't have to just read books to learn more about your industry or kind of learn something new, right? I think, and
Mm-hmm.
as we know, everybody has a podcast, right? And I know within my industry, I know one of my peers started one outside of this, the company did. So yeah, like I think
Mm-hmm.
it's super important to kind of stay on top of trends. Otherwise, like you're just going to be like reading for reading sakes, which I think is still important, right? And I think this is,
Yeah.
but yeah, like I think there should still also be one of like reading for your career and kind of learning something new, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. Well, thanks for sharing. That's
No
great.
worries. What books are you
Awesome.
reading?
I'm reading Cirque right now. I'm part of a book club.
Hmm.
I'm not big on reading. I do a lot of audiobooks.
Hmm.
I recently canceled my Scribed, which is like weird for me, but because I was like die hard. I think I did like almost like 40 something books one year. But
Nice.
I'm reading Cirque right now with my book club. That's been going well. And I'm actually reading the Bible as well.
Hmm.
I decided this year, I was like, you know what? I have never read the Bible like cover to cover.
Hmm.
I was like, how come? So I'm reading the Bible and I'm reading Cirque. Cirque, I don't even know who the author is, to be honest. I'm like 3 pages in, so wish me luck. I'm in a book club with like speed readers. Like my one friend, she reads like a book a day. She's one of those people, so I'm like
Yeah.
extremely nervous. But I said worst case scenario, I'll just get the audiobook and get through it. But so that's kind of where I'm at right now in terms of my reading.
Do you
It's
find
early in the year, so we'll see
value
what else I find
in
along the way.
yeah, do you find value in book clubs? Because I know I joined one and
Yeah.
it didn't align to the way I read books, right? Because I mean, I just like read 2 or 3 books just in regards to like which mood I'm in, right? But I
Yeah.
know typically the book club is like it's paced, right? So you need to like read a certain amount of chapters before like the next week, right? So yeah, I mean, do you find a lot of value with the
Yes.
books?
Well, that's a really good question. Listen, I'm not a reader, so this is like my first book club that I'm even a part of. But we're actually not doing like weekly check-ins, so
Hmm.
we're doing like a quarterly check-in, or like not even a quarterly. Like we're meeting in like a couple of months, and
Yeah.
I guess we should be done the book by then. But I am. It's Kayla. You know Kayla from Soft
Yeah. Yeah.
Choice. Yeah, so
Hmm.
she's in it as well, and I'm actually meeting with her for dinner in a couple of days. So I'm gonna do a
Nice.
check-in and be like, hey, do we want to just do like I don't know, every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, once a month at least, just to make sure people are actually reading.
Hmm.
So we'll see. But these girls, like, they're into books, so they hold
Hmm.
themselves accountable. So I don't really feel like it'll be an issue in that sense. But yeah, so it's my first kind of go at it. So we'll see. I don't really know, but I do like you said, like that check in kind of like bi-weekly read this many chapters. I do kind of like that because
Yeah.
I'm very big on like I love a schedule, I love a deadline, I love an accountability partner. Like if I don't have that, I'm kind of just like I don't know, we'll see how it happens, but I'm trying my best.
So funny story. So Stella has like a giant physical calendar like in her kitchen, right? And to be honest, like I thought she was absolutely crazy for having a physical calendar. 'Cause I'm like, well, like, just remember
I
this,
don't
right?
have it
But
anymore. It's 2024, so I'm gonna need to buy me a new one. But yes.
but so I've actually taken that advice and now I pretty much use Google Calendar. Like it's still not physical, but I use Google
Yeah.
Calendar to track pretty much every single thing. And I think
Yeah.
it's definitely made it easier to organize certain things that are kind of not work related. Obviously, in work you have to use Outlook, right?
Yeah.
But like I
Mhm.
think for just setting and just keeping on top of personal events and personal goals and accountability, like I think it's
Yes.
probably been one of the greatest things.
Nice.
I'm also using an app and they're definitely not paying me, but it's called what is it called? Uh,
I love that though. Like the calendar thing for me is huge.
Hmm.
I'm doing this thing now. I didn't read the book, but I read like the Sparks Notes version. You know when you get like those super condensed versions of books
Yeah.
on these platforms? It's called a 12-week year.
Hmm.
So I'm doing that as well. So it's kind of like the way I work in product management. It's like we run sprints. So we break our sort of like business goals up into like these mini chunks and try our
Yeah.
best to like achieve our goal within that time frame. So that's sort of what I'm doing for my life now. So the 12-week year has really helped as well. But I find like being able to supplement like the 12-week year with my calendar has been
Hmm.
pretty dope because now I go in every day and just like do little checks like, did I journal? Did I meditate? Did I do X, Y? And it really allows me to get like a holistic view of my goals. But instead of looking at like December 31st, now I'm like, okay, by like April 1st, I have to have done X, Y, Z. So the calendar with like all these other tools are like, yeah, gold for me.
So I so I have a question in regards to the sprints, but so the app is called I think it's called Paired, but
Paired?
it's actually really good, right? Because I mean, you essentially like track things and you kind of mark it
Ooh,
off,
okay.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, like I'm very much like a visual learner, right? And I think just kind of
Yeah.
seeing consistent like checks, it definitely kind of motivates me, right? And I
Yeah.
think uh, which kind of also relates to my question, but because I know
Yeah.
for like software development sprints, they're typically can range between like a month to about 3 months to about
Yeah.
6 months to about a year. But I
Yeah.
know you mentioned you're currently doing it in your personal life. Do you have like a
Yeah.
set period that you found works best for you? Because I know for me, like typically, like I only need about 2 weeks to kind of really like instill like a habit or kind of consistent
Mm-hmm.
habit, right? Because typically those are hardest to kind of consistently do it, right? But once you have it
Yeah.
ingrained, it's like it doesn't require that much mental effort to be like, cool, I'm gonna like read 30 minutes today, I'm gonna like do 100 crunches today, or I'm gonna like do an ice bath today, right? But do you find there's like a
Yeah.
nice sweet spot for you?
Um, that's a good question. I wouldn't say I do have a sweet spot because I find myself to be very much like it really just depends on like even seasonal for me. Like
Yeah.
seasons are very important. Like as you know, I'm not a huge fan of winter. I'm
Hmm.
currently in Toronto. It's mid-Jan.
Negative
So
15 right
like
now.
exactly. So these things are not conducive with like happy life for me. So it's
Hmm.
like I have to do certain activities and certain things now in order to ensure that I stay on top of it. So like I wouldn't necessarily say that I have like a time frame, more so like then and I talked to my therapist about this in terms of like just knowing that every day is like almost like a reset
Yep.
and like every day I have to just do the best that I can with the energy or the tools that I have within that day. So it's not so much like okay, like I've built this amazing because even with like working out for example, like I could be consistent working out but then like something comes up or like I'm not feeling well or it's that time of the month or whatever and then I kind of fall off. I'm not like looking at it like, okay, well, I haven't been working out for 5 days now, so therefore, like, I'm a complete failure. Like, I broke my habits. Like, it's more
Hmm.
like, okay, well, it's Tuesday tomorrow. What can I do tonight to prepare myself for Tuesday? So, for example, one thing I do is like, I like to journal before I go to bed, or at least
Hmm.
do like a mental sort of like note of what do I have to do, what do I want to accomplish, kind of thing. I do find writing it down is the best though
Hmm.
versus going over it in my head. You know, me and you, we did the 5 minute journal together.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's where that habit started. So me and Ash, some years ago, bought these 5 minute journals on Amazon. And I found like the morning and night sort of really sets the tone for like not only the sleep that I'm going to have, but also the day that I'm going to have. So for me, it's really just like a constant reset, really and truly. Like I can't necessarily say that it has that I run like sort of in sprints. What I do like with this like 12-week plan is that although I am looking at it on like a bit of a longer term, so it's like 3 months at a time, it still allows me to look at it like that things are a little bit more attainable. I'm also rewarding myself more because
Hmm.
it's kind of like you said, that checkbox, right? Being able to cross things out. I
Yeah.
find like I do get like a dopamine hit from that. So I do find like those activities and just like that sort of motion helps me a lot
Hmm.
versus, yeah, having like good weeks or like consistent like months at a time. I don't necessarily would say I have that. Like I find it's more so just like I don't feel like it, but what can I do today to show up for myself? What can I do today to show up for my team? What can I do today to show up for my dog? You know what I mean? Like my goal is to walk my dog X amount of times a day, but it's like not every day do I get 4 outings in, right? But it's like, okay, even if I'm not feeling well, like what's the best I can do with the tools that I have? So I kind of look at it that way. So very
Yeah,
differently than I do work.
and I think you said two interesting things that kind of stuck out to me, right? Like I think we share the same mindset of like each day is a new day, right? And I think
Yeah.
it's like cleaning the slate of the previous day, right? And I think
Yeah.
that like to be honest, that was probably uh mental map or like that view. Like to be honest, it's probably the only reason I survived in sales.
Yeah.
Because I
I
mean,
mean,
like
yeah.
regardless of how bad your day is today, right? Like
Yeah.
tomorrow's a new day, right? And you get
Or
a new
show up.
opportunity to like show up, right? And I think
Yeah.
like it's been groundbreaking, especially when you learn something new, right? Because I mean, like you're not gonna have like the funnest day when you're learning something new, right? You're gonna
Yeah.
fumble and bumble. You're gonna feel like you're absolutely just kind of failing at things. But yeah, like I think the
Exactly.
next day and consistently trying and consistently coming with like the best attitude, right? And I think the positivity is
Exactly.
super important. And like I think the second thing you said, which I completely forgot, but yeah, like I think like yeah, like that 5 minute journal was interesting, right? Because I think it broke it up. I think it was like morning, afternoon, and like evening kind of
Yeah.
split. For me, to be honest, like I'm not a morning person at all. So
Yeah.
like the morning journals were
Empty
just like
pages.
scribbles. They're just like, I am alive. Today is good.
I made
We'll
it.
rock it. Yeah, but like I realized, I think through just consistent practice of like evenings is like when I'm about to go to sleep. Like that's kind of when I'm the
Right.
most like clear and like cognizant, right? So I was able to
Exactly.
like write a lot more. But I think
Yeah.
it's one of the things where like you will only learn through going through the exercise, right? Versus just
Exactly.
not. And I think any sort of journaling, and I think for me, like I've journaled for like a third of my life, right? So for a good 10 years, and I think it's been such a great habit to kind of just help me kind of get all the things that are in my head that are just buzzing about, like oh, like other assignments, other responsibilities. You just sit down and kind of just really write it down and kind of get it out of my head, right? And I think
Yeah.
it's been such a crazy habit, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's such a nice habit to build up. And
Yeah,
it's like you said, find whatever works for you. The reality is
yeah,
it's definitely a lot of trial and error. When it comes to like my business sprints, I look at things completely different because
yeah,
there I look at like what are the salaries for my entire team. Well, let's say we're looking at $60,000 every 2 weeks. That's what it costs. That's like the business cost
yeah,
to run my team. Then I say, okay, to myself, I have $60,000. How am I spending that over the next 14 days,
yeah.
minus weekends, right?
Hmm.
So that's very different in terms of my approach because then it's not like, oh, we're going to do the best we can with the effort. Like, no,
No,
we're
no.
not. We're
There's
not
clear
doing the best we
deliverables.
can.
Yeah,
We are delivering, right?
yeah,
But it's one of those things. It's learning sort of like learning also what are like the consequences of those
yeah,
actions and what are the costs, like the immediate costs, whether, and you can look at it for yourself too, like what are the costs to my mental health, what are the costs
yeah.
to my physical well-being, right? If I look at like exercise, for example, like 12 months from now, who will I be if I don't do X? So that's like a cost to
Yeah.
my physical body, things like that. So you just kind of have to figure out what works for you and what makes sense,
Hmm.
and then sort of roll things in the most appropriate manner, so to speak. That's the
Yeah, and,
best
and
advice I could
and I
say.
think that's kind of somewhat unique to tech, right? Like, there's no one way like solves all, right? Like, you
Yeah.
could essentially get into tech in whatever way works best for you, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of the only industries kind of like that, right? And I think
Yeah.
it's crazy to see in kind of the amount of my coworkers who have like gone to like different points and all having success, right? Like
Yeah.
anybody could get into tech, right? As long as you're willing to kind of learn and challenge yourself. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, like you could do anything, right? And I think
Yeah.
like to be honest, I think it's probably the best note to ever end the podcast.
Yeah, it really
But
is. It
yeah.
really is. Yeah, we'll definitely end it there. I completely agree with you. I find like, yeah, being in the tech space for me has just been amazing. It's afforded a lot of like really cool opportunities. I met you because I worked in tech. Like I would
Yeah.
have never known you. We have so many other amazing friends that are also part of our circle that I would have never met. So I am so grateful to be in this space. And yeah, I mean, I I say it all the time, but definitely if you're thinking about making the switch, now is definitely the time. So I want to thank you so much for joining me today. This was
Thanks for having
amazing.
me.
I'm so glad we were able to make it happen. We might even have to make this a two-parter. I'm not sure. We'll see. But honestly, it was a great conversation. I'm super grateful for you and your constant support and just who you are to me as a friend. Honestly, I'm so thankful for you. And yeah, I wish you the best of luck with everything. I can't wait to have you on again in the future.
Yeah, and I'm super honest here to be on your podcast. Like Stella, so Stella originally mentioned to me, what was it like a couple years back? She's like, "Yeah, I want to start a podcast." I'm like, "You're gonna start this podcast," and so I've been an arduous supporter of the
You
podcast, and
have.
to be honest, it's been exciting just kind of see your growth,
Oh,
both
thanks.
right now as well as kind of other projects you worked on. And yeah,
Yeah.
let me know how I can best support Stella. I
I
mean,
will
we're
say
here.
shout out to Hamid because this mic was a gift to me from him when I said I wanted to start my podcast. Do you remember we were sitting on your balcony in City
Yeah,
Place going to that concert?
yeah.
And yeah, when I tell you like number one cheerleader, huge supporter, like you're just incredible and I'm so grateful for you. And yeah, thank you for always
Yeah,
being
no
there.
worries. Just when this blows up, remember about the little guys.
I will, of course. Thanks
Yeah.
so much, Hamid. I really appreciate you. So, thanks so much for joining the Technically Yes podcast. As always, I'm your host, Stella, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Take care.
See you, everybody.
Bye. Thank you so much for tuning into the Technically Yes podcast. If you like today's episode, rate this podcast 5 stars on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if you would like to get in touch with me, reach out to me on Instagram at the Tech Yes Pod and find me and subscribe on YouTube by looking up the Technically Yes podcast. Thanks again and chat to you guys next week.